This is a breaking news update.
And we hate to wake people up with this terrible news of an active shooter situation in the city of Dayton, in the Oregon district this morning. It started just after 1 o'clock. Someone opened fire, but never, ever have we heard anything at all like this in the city of Dayton or in the Oregon district. But we also know that Dayton police officers train regularly for active shooter. Ever since Columbine shooting in Colorado in 1999, the training changed. You don't wait for SWAT. The officers on scene take down whoever's doing the shooting. What stays with me about what he said was that he couldn't even see what this person looked like. He was wearing a mask and had a hood pulled up and was dressed in dark clothing, did he say? You know, you see someone who you can't even identify who's shooting at people he apparently doesn't even know.
Right. And Robert was, he said, 5-10 feet from this man.
And this is the end of Memorial Day weekend, so if you're listening on WHIO radio and you're on I-70, get off. If you're in western Montgomery County, do not be there. Get off the highway. There's a tornado activity in that area.
I'm sorry, I'm getting choked.
It's okay. And I would advise anybody with kids, get the bike helmets on them. Put them in the basement. Put the helmets on them. This is not a time to think about anything looking silly. Please stay safe. We were so worried about your safety for about 3 hours as 15 tornadoes hit across the Miami Valley. James, that officer who was shot last night is Officer George Del Rio. He's a detective on the department since March of 1989. I remember meeting him as a young officer. Then later with all the other women in his family, and I still love that term, George and the Del Rioettes, because he was surrounded by beauty. His wife Kathy, their daughters, their granddaughters, all women. And George Del Rio, you're going to be missed. Just said this is devastating to lose Detective Del Rio because he was so important. We're looking down the street now, and I think we've got some activity coming. Is that right, Todd? I'm going to step out of the way. I talked to detectives and to Cheryl's family and best friend. They tell me the woman they know would never just take off. On the morning of October 2nd at about 7:25, Cheryl Coker dropped off her 15-year-old daughter at Stebbins, and that was the last time anyone reported seeing her.
Please leave your message for...
Hello, Mr. Coker. This is Cheryl McHenry from Newssetter 7. I tried repeatedly to reach Bill Coker for comment, but he did not respond. A local expert says a water main break that's affecting a large portion of Montgomery County was a blowout, gushing 100 million gallons of water from underneath the Great Miami River. We have a team of reporters covering every angle from how this is impacting families to the important steps you need to take if you are under that advisory. We were there as federal investigators unveiled corruption charges.
Did you accept any bribes?
4 men, including former politicians, now stand indicted as part of an investigation into corruption, and investigators say there could be more arrests. We have Team 7 coverage with Newssetter 7's Jim Oddie, Mike Campbell, and Kate Bartley. Jim begins our Team 7 coverage with what the FBI said about this case this afternoon. Meanwhile, the lack of medical supplies meant his friends could not save John Gaffney.
Captain Gaffney died on my knees, and I watched the light go out of his eyes. Thank you.
Ohio not only gave Neil Armstrong roots, but wings. He learned to fly in his hometown and took pieces of the Wright brothers airplane to the moon with him. But it may have been this ice cream parlor in downtown Lebanon that first sold the Armstrongs on this area. His first wife, Janet, later recalled seeing people they thought they could identify with here. Do you remember what he ordered?
I do. He sat right here and ordered a cup of soup.
It's Memorial Day. They've been enjoying time with family and friends. And now we have to pay attention to what's coming in here because this could be potentially serious. A large and extremely dangerous tornado that touched down in Akron, Indiana, which is west of Fort Wayne. But of course, this is very concerning weather since, as you pointed out, it's moving easterly towards much of our viewing area. We are getting reports now, too, McCall, of as this storm has moved from Indiana into Ohio, several reports of trees down in Pendleton, Indiana, which is north and west of Richmond. So we may have 3 tornadoes so far tonight in our area. So I hope you'll heed what McCall is saying. If you're in any of these areas or anywhere in the Miami Valley, why not just stay safe? Why not just go to your safe spot? Please stay safe. Get to where you need to be. You've heard it before. Get in the basement. Get in a bathtub, cover yourself. If you don't have a basement, be in an interior room and stay safe because we've got some serious concerns out here. They end a Memorial Day weekend, so if you're listening on WHIO radio and you're on I-70, get off. If you're in western Montgomery County, do not be there. And we hope that it is just damage. So if you'll heed the warnings, get to that safe spot, get to your basement, get to your interior bathroom, go now. Better to have damage. Things can be replaced. We don't want people hurt tonight. Can I mention real quick, we do have a report of really bad damage at the River's Edge Apartments on Riverside Drive in Dayton. And also, I don't think we mentioned this yet, Brookville High School is closed tomorrow because of tornado damage to the roof there. And we're going to look at some new video from Salina now. Sean Cudahy and Steve McGuire are up there. As he said, one neighborhood was pretty much destroyed. He put it, lots of damage. He wasn't sure that there were any homes in that neighborhood that escaped unscathed. Okay, somebody's telling me now there's a friend, her mother is stuck in the basement. Hang on a second, let me see what this woman is telling me.
Okay.
She says, we were talking about this, she said, there's a friend of mine, her mother is stuck in her basement, tornado took her roof off. She's by Westbrook and Hoke. So that Westbrook and Hoke Road, we're talking northwestern Montgomery County, Inglewood area.
Yep. And that would be consistent
area.
with where the storm moved through.
Okay, it's been about 4 hours we've been on the air, but very frightening night. So many messages from people telling me they were worried, they're scared, they're terrified. You know, sometimes I think people think we cry wolf because there are lots of severe thunderstorm warnings. We get a lot of weather in this part of the country. But a night like tonight, we haven't seen this. We just have not seen this. Not anything like this.
Yeah, but he was a kid, 14 years old.
Inside a Miamisburg middle school classroom, this man's 14-year-old son became his teacher's victim.
Couldn't believe that that would ever happen in the classroom.
During his first interview, the teen's father told the I-Team how that one act has forever changed his son's life.
You know, he's had to put up with bullying from other students. You know, people make comments, all kinds of disparaging comments.
During that teacher, Jessica Langford's trial, at first she tried to show she was the victim. In just days, she'll be released from serving her one-year sentence in Marysville. Her jury agreed the evidence showed how she was guilty of abusing her power when she had sex with the 14-year-old in her classroom on the last day of school.
I don't see how anyone could ever do something like that, an adult. I mean, there's 17 years difference at the time of the offense.
And Langford, state numbers, Newssetter 7 and Dayton Daily News reporting show, is just one of dozens of teachers caught having sexual contact with students.
It's disheartening, it's sickening.
David Romick is the head of Dayton's Teachers Union.
I don't think it happens frequently, but when it happens, it's bad.
In 2017 alone, the Ohio Department of Education says there were 39 teachers with criminal sexual offenses. Another 863 teachers were found to have engaged in what it calls conduct unbecoming. But under current teacher rules, the I-Team discovered it's not clear how many of those hundreds of cases, if any, involved sexual misconduct.
I suspect many of the problems that we have today have been going on for a long time. It's just that social media magnify how often it happens.
The University of Dayton's Dr. Charlie Russo has authored papers and lectured aspiring teachers on appropriate social media use.
I think with social media now, as it permeates everything we do, teachers have lost the line between what's personal and what's professional.
Here in the Miami Valley and southwestern Ohio, at least 10 teachers have been convicted of sex-related charges involving students since 2013. 6 have gone to jail, and 3 are still in prison. Langford, former Franklin High School teacher Madeline Arnett, and former Fort Recovery teacher Christopher Summers. Summers had a more than 2-year sexual relationship with a high school student that included thousands of calls and text messages, some of which threatened his victim.
And started having contact through Snapchat.
The father of Langford's victim says she also used social media to communicate with his son.
She also texted him from another student's phone.
Nowadays, everybody has a cell phone, and many of these cases begin with texting and other forms of social media. Stricter guidelines are now being developed on how teachers should use social media to interact with students.
Technology is a part in the current one.
As the head of the Teachers Union, Romick says those guidelines will come in a revised version of the Ohio Educators Code of Conduct, which the I-Team has learned should be finalized very soon.
If we can make sure our teachers know how to do that and have clear guidelines around that, we're all going to be better off.
At her sentencing, Jessica Langford eventually admitted her crime and apologized to her victim.
I am completely responsible for my actions and should have never abused my power as a teacher.
Like the others convicted, she can never teach again and must register as a sex offender.
He's gone to counseling. We've talked about it. It's made us closer.
But her victim's father says what cannot be forgotten is the heavy price his son is paying.
Within the community, he has lost friends, very isolated.
Which is why this dad is so proud of how his son is now moving forward. Forever proud that his son reported his abuse at the hands of a teacher documents show had a history of concerning behavior long before the 14-year-old became a victim.
You don't want it to happen to someone else or their child. You don't. And that was the biggest reason why my son reported it.
Miamisburg School Superintendent David Vail would not answer the victim's family's charge his district mishandled their son's case, but the superintendent tells me their webpage now includes a teacher sexual contact reporting link.
He sounded like he'd won the lottery.
Army Staff Sergeant Joshua Berry was on his way home from Afghanistan to Cincinnati when he called his dad on November 4th, 2009.
I don't think I've ever heard him in my entire life more excited.
The next day, Sergeant Berry had to go to the Soldier Readiness Processing Complex at Fort Hood. Colonel Kathy Platoni, a psychologist from Centerville, was also there, preparing to deploy to Afghanistan with her Army Reserve unit. All of the soldiers were unarmed.
At 1:34 p.m., I heard a civilian screaming, they're shooting in the other building.
She ran toward the shooting and witnessed a bloodbath.
5 of my friends were carrying in Captain John Gaffney, and I could see that he'd been shot.
Sergeant Berry was in the building next door and sprang into action.
He instructed the other people in the room to take cover and make sure that the doors were secured and told them to stay away from the windows.
Meanwhile, the lack of medical supplies meant his friends could not save John Gaffney.
Captain Gaffney died on my knees, and I watched the light go out of his eyes. Thank you.
When Berry heard gunfire hitting his building, he dove over a desk and separated his shoulder. He survived, but
it changed him forever, and he was never the same person.
The man behind the massacre,
he stood up on a table and yelled, Allahu Akbar,
was Major Nidal Hassan, an American-born Army psychiatrist.
And he just fired in a fan-like motion, continuously reloading many times with extended magazines to kill as many American soldiers as he could.
Those who survived say the aftermath has been grossly mishandled. The biggest injustice, in their view, continuing to label the Fort Hood shooting workplace violence.
Which is the ultimate betrayal for those who were there and witnessed this carnage.
During Hassan's trial in 2013, he admitted shooting soldiers to protect Taliban leaders in Afghanistan from the U.S. military. He was convicted and sentenced to death. That same year, Howard Berry went to Washington and got 225 members of Congress to sign House Resolution 3111.
It was called the Fort Hood Heroes Act. It told the truth.
The bill would declare Fort Hood a terrorist attack and Hassan a traitor and enemy of the United States. It would also grant benefits to the wounded, many of whom have had to pay their own expenses. But Congress never voted on the bill.
I never considered myself a tattoo person, but I needed a way to immortalize my friends who lost their lives.
Kathy Platoni is now retired from the Army Reserve, but still fighting for those affected by Fort Hood. She never takes off her hero's bracelets.
And it has the names of the soldiers from my unit that were killed that day.
Every Fort Hood soldier was given the Meritorious Service Medal, and the Army later awarded Purple Hearts to the wounded and the families of the dead.
To me, this is unfinished business.
Staff Sergeant Joshua Berry took his own life in 2013, one of 7 suicides in the wake of Fort Hood. Though he wasn't shot in the massacre, his father is still trying to get a Purple Heart for him, believing the injuries he sustained that day led to his death.
And all I've asked for, make the award and amend his grave marker, and I'll go away.
Ohio Senator Rob Portman was a co-sponsor of the Fort Hood Heroes Act, which was never voted on by the Senate or the House. The senator told the I-Team he would personally look into whether the bill could be resurrected, saying he still supports the measure. Meantime, Army Staff Sergeant Barry's dad told me it is still so important for his late son to receive a Purple Heart because he wants to be able to show his 9-year-old granddaughter her daddy was a hero.